Good morning. You're listening to Spectrum on 105.9 WJZW Woodbridge, Washington. I'm Thomas Grooms, and joining us this morning once again, Jim Weider, lead guitarist for the Honky Tonk Gurus, former lead guitarist with the band, and also as a special treat this morning, a gentleman you might all know from the Conan O'Brien Show, lead guitarist for the Max Weinberg 7, Jimmy Vivino. Gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to Spectrum.
Good morning. And it's too early for this, man.
God, is it early?
What time is it anyway?
It's 6 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We better brush our eyebrows.
But all bluesmen go to sleep at this time, isn't that true?
Sometimes. You know, I've known them to go to sleep right on stage, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Both of you gentlemen have so much charisma with you at this time in 2000. I don't know where to begin. Jim, you've been through a lot since the 1980s. You were the lead guitarist for the band. You've seen a lot of political changes. You've seen the Berlin Wall come down. You've done 3 albums with the band. Now you have your own band, and you've hooked up with this gentleman who is a talent himself, Jim Vivino. What's happening with you and your musical career here in 2000?
Well, I had the lucky chance to work with Jimmy on his new record that we did at Levon Studio, and that was a ball. Actually, we just cut a couple other tracks, didn't we, Jimmy, the other day with Levon and Garth.
And who was on bass?
That was me.
You know what happened? We had a gig together coming up, and I was just going to have Garth come in and do some overdubs, and I figured I had just seen Jimmy the night before. I said, hey, would you play bass? Because Ricky Danko was playing on this stuff before, and we really were at a loss. I mean, the world's at a loss, but we were really at a loss to find somebody that could do just that, you know, because Levon was playing drums and Garth was playing, and Randy had played on some, and Jimmy and I working on my new album at Levon's house, and then Ricky passed, and I said,
chord right where Danko hit it.
Weider, he made the same mistakes Rick would have made. Levon sort of tutored him through it the same way, and it was great to have him playing bass. But that's just an aside. Mm-hmm. From the record has been ongoing for about 2 years now. We get up here when we can and get into the barn and record. We've known each other for a long time. We played together. I moved up here around 3 years ago, so we've been threatening working together, actually on our own project, which we haven't even begun yet. So that'll be next.
You guys played for a wonderful gathering here in Woodstock, New York, right outside of Socrates, and blues seemed to be, I guess, the lead factor. You are quite a blues man. Well, I was very impressed. The song, I Want My Punishment in Cash.
Oh, yeah, well, that's a song I wrote with Levon. It's called Money Whip Me. It's one of his favorite sayings. You call Levon, you say, hey, Lee, we got a gig. He says, just money with me. I'll be there. Yeah. And we just had a conversation around his house, around the pond at the house. And I just like to say, Levon Helm, he's a storyteller. And if Levon Helm tells me a story, and I write a song out of that story, me and Levon wrote that song. Hint, hint. For all you guys out there who have talked to Levon Helm before, written songs, and not remember that Levon Helm told you that story, like the W.S. Walcott Medicine Show, etc., etc. I have a real affinity for storytellers. I grew up listening to Gene Shepard on the radio, and he would just like mesmerize me. And Levon's a storyteller like that. He can tell you about times in Arkansas. You see these people. You may never meet these people. You see them. You write. So we had a collaboration in that way where I just would say, Lee, tell me something about something, anything, whatever it is. So we wrote that song together, just money with me, and I'll take my punishment in cash,
It was a great tune. Great set. I mean, you guys cooked. Our guest this morning, Jim Vivino from the Conan O'Brien Show, and also with us Jim Weider from Jim Weider and the Honky Tonk Gurus, and our focus this morning is their careers over the past 3 decades. Jim, how did you wind up on the Conan O'Brien Show?
I was lucky, and I'll say that to all you great guitar players out there, and all you great arrangers and all. I had known Max for a long time. We had a band together. I had my own band with most of the guys. So, it's the kind of the old saying, we all played in different bands together. So it was a kind of a Jersey scene. My brother and I had Scott Healy and Mike Merritt, who are the bass player and piano player, or actually piano player and bass player in that order, in our band. And Max had, Mike Merritt had played with a band called Killer Joe that Max and I had, and Mark Pender and Richie Rosenberg, or La Bamba, had played with the Jukes and with Bruce Springsteen on tour, so Max knew those two horn players, and we all got together. The story is I was out on the West Coast in San Francisco playing with Clarence Clemens when I got a call from Max, and he said, you got to come home now. I got an audition. I said, and I told him that we had a band, because we used to have a band. It wasn't a complete fib. So let's put the band back together. You know, let's call from this guy, that guy, this guy, and we did an audition, and we got the gig purely because I think we didn't know anything other than playing some old jump blues that we knew and stuff like Louis Jordan material, and it was so different than what everybody else was auditioning on, you know, that we got it just by the quirkiness of the band, and since then it's 8 years have gone by now, and it sure is a good gig. But outside of that, more important is that it affords me to do a lot of things that I couldn't do before. I do more producing, more playing than I did. I can't do as much road work, but I get to be a lot more. It's a lot more easy to say I'll be there for somebody. You know, having the gig as a base. You know, there's Johnny Johnson, Hubert Sumlin, Sun Seals, people I've produced and worked with that, you know, now I can fly there. If I want to go play with Johnny, I'll fly down to St. Louis and play with Johnny. It's my vacation.
And both of you are not only great guitarists, but you are producers. Jim, you produced Elvis's band, which was quite a milestone in your career.
Yeah, well, I worked with Paul Burleson on the Train Kept a Rollin' record that we did a few years ago, and that had, boy, it had everybody from DJ Fontana on it to the guy from Bruce Springsteen's band on bass,
Gary
Talent, and Levon, Mavis Staples, Kim Wilson. Just had a big row of people that was just a big thrill for me to play with, and we just made it a really good time musical thing, and it came out pretty good.
You're listening to Spectrum, a real treat this morning. Our guests, Jimmy Vivino and Jim Weider. And we're up here in Woodstock, New York this morning doing the show live. Gentlemen, as you look at the news headlines, I know you're both recluses pretty much. You watch a little TV, don't you?
No.
Not really. But you're hearing a lot about how the Supreme Court had a ruling last week as far as taking music off the computer. You know, that's kind of in hiatus right now. What are your feelings about, you know, the computer and what it's done to the music industry here in 2000?
I have two ways of looking at it, of course. One is that in the late 60s and early 70s, when FM radio started, it was kind of underground. And they'd play an entire album on there, you know. And I, as a kid, would sit there with my tape recorder and record the album. You know, if the new Hendrix album or Cream album, they say, hey, we're going to play the album at 7 o'clock. And we'd all get our tape recorders out and record it, sure enough. But after recording it, we would go out and buy the record because we wanted that hard copy. You know, you want to own something that you like. I don't know how many people actually have the patience, time, or equipment to make a professional quality recording off the internet that the record companies have to worry about. I do think, though, that there's so much music that can't be heard, music like that I make or that Jimmy makes, unless it's heard that way through the internet, and a lot of sales we can do. We're not with major labels. We don't sign with major labels. There's no market, so there's no radio. There's no MTV for us. So how do we get our stuff out there? I can't say that it's a bad thing yet. I don't think they really have to worry about people not buying records. You know, and you want the hard copy. That's my point.
I think there's two sides to the coin. I could see people like, you know, people who sell mega amounts of records, like Sheryl Crow or something, and people they put a record out and these kids passing around, they bootleg it and they don't get any royalties at all. I can see that point with major stars, but on the other side, they need to work out a way of paying so those people get paid, and so everybody gets paid a royalty, but guys like us who put records out and young bands getting started get all this exposure that's really important. That, you know, these big companies, they just want to make the big hit, make all the money quickly, and then move on to the next act and move on to the next act. And all of a sudden, there's no developing an act anymore. And we've gone way past that. They don't even look at us.
Yeah, we used to take 3 records for a band to break. I mean,
they build a band. They make.
You don't have a hit out of the box now, right? You're done. That's it.
So,
Yeah.
So now, so there's two sides to the coin. I understand both sides, but I think they need to work out a royalty thing for people.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's an idea that I mean, nothing should be for free. You know,
But there is a lot of help to what Napster has done. You know, I mean, I think it's a good thing too. You know, so there's two ways to look at it. That's
there
all
are
I'm
two ways to look at it, and I understand how the people who have millions of dollars at stake and billions of dollars as an industry are worried about it. But there's a creative side to it, you know, that you have to look at from the little guy who's like, you know, how's my stuff going to get heard? There's no radio, and for blues. It's for blues. It's an hour on a public access station, you know, and even that they got to have a fundraiser to get the money to put up a blues show. Yeah. So, any way it can get heard. I mean, you know, maybe they shouldn't be. I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't be able to download an entire album, but maybe a song here and there, you know, would be a good idea. Maybe there should be a limit on the amount of music.
Well, you gentlemen will have a chance to get even this morning. I'm going to let you both play disc jockey. Is that okay? We can play some smooth jazz this morning. Now, Woodstock is renowned for the jazz that comes out of this area. A lot of jazz musicians are living up in the mountains here, in the Catskill Mountains. Pat Metheny, a very quiet, introverted kind of guy.
Yeah. He lives up here.
I've seen him play here right at Opus 40 where we are right now in Woodstock.
Oh, yeah, great. He did it with the trio thing. He gave me the new record, the trio record, which is great. And of course, anybody that's that hooked into Ornette Coleman is okay with me. And we played. Jimmy and I both played with the Rock and Soul Review with Donald Fagen in the city. And Pat came by one night and played guitar, and boy, it was, you know, we play guitar and Pat plays music. We play guitar. You know, we know the guitar players we like. We know, you know, Pat is a different animal completely.
Be a guitar if it's Pat.
No, it could be a piano. It could be a horn. It's just anything by Pat Metheny is great. Okay, hi, this is Jim Vivino. We live here with Pat Metheny on Smooth Jazz.
105.9.
Hi, this is Jimmy Vivino from the Conan O'Brien Show. You're listening to Spectrum on WJZW 105.9, and you're going to hear some George Benson's going to floor you.
You're listening to Spectrum on 105.9 WJZW. Our guests this morning, Jim Weider and Jim Vivino, and they've been playing disc jockey. You had mentioned the Steely Dan record, or you had mentioned playing with Donald Fagen. Yeah. Of course, Steely Dan have a record out after 20 years.
Well, Donald's a neighbor here, too, you know. He's a neighbor also, and I used to play in a little club in New York, and Donald lived around the corner from the club. And, my friend Jeff Young, who played organ in the band, I think he's now with Jackson Browne, if I'm not mistaken. He knew Donald. They had worked together on the Gospel of Colonus or something and I can't remember how they knew each other, but they had been working together. So he brought Donald around. It was like that kind of thing, and then Donald would come and sit in, and finally, we turned it into a thing called, first it turned into the Rock and Soul Review, and then the New York Nights, and we did live shows. And what we would do basically was have Donald and my band or Jeff's band or both bands or a mixture of all the bands we knew, or just people that were available for that night. And then we'd go out and find great R&B singers like Chuck Jackson and say, okay, we'll back you up on 3 tunes. Phoebe Snow on 3 tunes. We put a review together. So it was the Rock and Soul Review, and we started doing that. And we slipped a Steely Dan tune in now and then. We started getting them together. And then, evidently, one night, Walter Becker came in. And I, in my diplomatic way, yelled over the mic, "Walter Becker, come on up here." And he's standing against the wall, like, trying to be as cool as he could to not be noticed. So the spotlight hits him, and he has to come up and play. He comes, and I think it was Elliot Randall and myself were playing guitars. And, you know, then Walter joined us. And, boy, I had known that Walter Becker was a good guitar player, but this was some burning, like he was burning, man. He was so good, and those guys got back together, and I don't think it was because of that, but that may just have been one of the steps in them getting back together, and they made a great record, Two Against Nature. They really, I heard the record, and I know they'd been working on it for a couple of years, and for them it was a short time, actually. They put this record together. And when I put that record on, I just went right back. No time had passed between Gaucho and that record to me. You know, it was like, it was good to have them back.
Well, Jim Weider has it right now. He's got it in the machine, and I believe he has queued up Jack of Speed, Steely Dan's latest. Are you ready to play that, Jim?
Yeah, let's play Jack of Speed now. Hey, I'm Jim Weider. Here's Jack of Speed on Smooth Jazz 105.9.
You're listening to Spectrum on 105.9 WJZW, Woodbridge, Washington. A real treat this morning. Our guests have been Jim Vivino from the Conan O'Brien Show and the Max Weinberg 7. Also with us, Jim Weider, former lead guitarist of the band. And before you gentlemen split, the environment here in Woodstock, you're very blessed to have such a wonderful environment here. How do you keep everything in tandem with nature?
Well, I'm thankful every day that, watch the sun come up and watch it go down up here. It's beautiful,
Well, I've lived a lot of places and been on the road like Jimmy has. We've lived in a lot of hotel rooms and a lot of places, and I know where I'm gonna end my life. I know where I'm dying, and that's Woodstock. I'm gonna be here. This is where it all ends. After all the madness is over, and everything ends. After television, after whatever, it's all not important. When you come to Woodstock, you realize that you're in God's country.
That's the Catskill Mountains.
That's the Catskill Mountains, yeah. And you were born here, man.
As you know, the Clinton administration is wrapping up. You were lucky to play for the inaugural back in 1992. Clinton has at least tried to reinstitute music education in the schools throughout the country. There's been, cutbacks throughout the 90s. What are your feelings about music education in the schools here in 2000?
I wish it was a little more like it was in the old days, because I had a great music department in my high school, and it allowed me to be an arranger and to learn how to do things at an early age. And we even had an independent study program where I was channeled in a public school system. They would say, okay, you have a free hour here. Do you want to take it? Where do you want to take it? And I would take it in music. So we had a great program and encouraged music and encouraged arts and encouraged acting. They had a drama department. All that stuff is the first to go. When when it comes down to money, the arts get cut first, and it's a bad thing. And I don't know that it's always been said that Democrats support the arts and Republicans don't. I don't believe any of that stuff. I think that people have to lobby a little harder for their own children, and that's whatever it takes. Then we need some demonstrations again or something, but they can't take music out of the schools. It's bad enough we have to have programs to donate instruments now to schools. They can't even afford, but they can afford to buy the football team whatever they need. So once again, it's arts versus jocks, and we should really get it together and come together on it.
Very eloquently said. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on Spectrum, and when you come through Washington, do stop by the station.
You're welcome very much, man.
Love to, Tom.
Hi, this is Jimmy Vivino from the Conan O'Brien Show. You're listening to Spectrum on WJZW.